Hey everyone! Last week I showed you guys how to make cold porcelain, and I told you guys that I would be showing you a few different things that you can make with this clay, so let's get started. I'm going to show you a few different things that you can make. Not all of these supplies apply to every piece that I make, but they're nice to have if you're doing any kind of sculpting with this clay. You'll need cold porcelain, PVA glue, various sculpting tools. Be inventive. You can use a bunch of different things. I used my hands, of course, a big metal yarn needle for smaller detail work, a box cutter or X-Acto knife, an awl, a wooden dowel, etc. Stuff to color the clay. I used some craft paint, a marker, metallic powder, India ink, pastels, etc. Some paintbrushes, eye pins, some beads, saran wrap, a cup, water, acrylic sealer, or any other kind of finish. First, I'll show you how to make a rose. I wanted to dust on some color, so before I even touched the clay, I used a box cutter to shave some pastel onto my work surface. Grab a chunk of clay. If you grab more than you need at the moment, you can keep the extra bit in some saran wrap. Flatten the clay slightly and dab on the marker to transfer some of the ink onto the clay, and then knead it in thoroughly. Pinch off a small piece of clay and flatten it into the palm of your hand. Roll it up onto itself, concentrating on making it tighter on one side. That will be the top. So flip it over and squeeze the bottom together. Take another chunk of clay, flatten it, and then wrap it around the base of the rose. Use your finger to very slightly push down the edge of the petal, making it look more open. Repeat this, offsetting the new petal a little bit each time, until your rose is as big as you want. Pinch off the extra clay on the bottom, and then you can use a brush to dust on some pastel for more color. Since I had extra pink clay, I made another rose. You can scale this technique up or down, so you can make bigger roses or smaller, tiny roses. If you wanted to make this into a bead, you could create a hole in the base of the rose with an awl, or a piece of wire, or anything like that. Or if you want to make it into a charm, you could just stick an eye pin in. Or you could just leave them as is and use them as decorations for various other crafts. The next things I'll show you are a bow and a heart charm. Squeeze a small dot of craft paint onto the clay and knead it until the color is thoroughly mixed in. I decided to add some of the red pastel that was left over from the roses. To make a bow, take a chunk of clay and roll it into a thin log. Flatten it out and then fold over each edge into the middle. Press the middle down to secure the ends, and then squeeze the top and bottom towards the middle to make a bow shape, and then put a dent onto each side of the bow. Roll out a smaller piece of clay and flatten it. Squeeze a small dot of glue onto the middle of the bow and carefully lay the thin piece of clay over it and around to the back. Set it aside to dry. With the leftover clay, I decided to make a heart. It's really simple, just roll the clay into a ball, roll it into a teardrop shape, and then flatten it. Then make an indentation in the middle of the round side. Smooth that out to shape it into a heart. I decided to make this into a charm, so I stuck a short eye pin into the top. Now I'll show you how to make a little decorative dish. First, grab a cup or something similar to use as a mold. Cover it with saran wrap. You can see bits of clay on the glass here, left over from a test dish that I had made before, where I didn't cover the glass with saran wrap. Spread a thin layer of lotion onto your work surface. I colored this clay with a little bit of cream craft paint. Roll the clay into a ball and squish flat onto the work surface. Use a dowel or something similar to roll the clay out thin. Make sure you do this on a clean surface, or else you'll get little speckles of random stuff in your clay. Peel the clay off of the table and drape it over the mold. Smooth down, and use a blade to cut around the dish to get rid of the uneven lip. Remove the extra clay. Run a wet finger around the lip to smooth it out. You can let it dry like this, or you can add little feet onto the bottom. Take the extra clay and divide it into 3 sections. Apply a dot of glue for each leg around the bottom of the dish, form them into long teardrop shapes, and then attach the legs. With the rest of the leftover clay, I decided to make another, bigger rose in a different technique. Roll out the clay thinly, and then using a lid or something circular, cut out a few circles. Remove the extra clay and set a little chunk of it aside, and spread the rest out and cut some more circles. I can't say exactly how many you'll need, I just cut out as many as I could. And with the last bit of scrap from cutting the circles, I formed a flat oval. Form that extra chunk into a teardrop shape. Take the oval and wrap it around the chunk of clay. Make sure the pointy side is at the top. I ended up wrapping it a little and then pulling the extra off, then repositioning the extra clay to make another petal, and then pulling the extra off, then wrapping the rest so it looked like this. I ended up sticking the large yarn needle into the base of the rose to make it easier to handle. I also used the trick of sticking it into a spool of thread to hold it up. Now take a circle, flatten the edges a little bit, and then wrap it around the base. Repeat this until you've used up all your petals. Towards the end, you'll find that your petals are starting to dry out a little bit, so you may need to use a little bit of glue to help them stick on. Once you've added the petals, you can remove the needle or whatever you were using to help handle the rose, and then you can pinch off the extra clay at the bottom. So I was going to dust this with some pink or red pastel, but I decided that it looked more like a cabbage than a rose, so I ended up coloring it accordingly. I dusted some yellow in the middle and then green on the outer leaves. You should let each piece dry for at least 2 days. Unless it's really thin or tiny, it will probably need all of that time to dry out. I just let mine hang out for the whole weekend. Time to see how the dish turned out. To remove it from the mold, simply pull the saran wrap down and the clay should pop off. Since I rolled mine out so thin, it's not as sturdy, so I would only hold jewelry or other small things in it. I was going to leave it as is, but I ended up getting inspired by these super cute planters that my sister got me for my birthday, and I wanted to do something similar. I decided to do a seal. I just took some purple craft paint for the background and painted a little seal shape, using 2 of the legs as the front flippers. I used a pink marker to make little rosy cheeks, and then some India ink for the eyes, nose, mouth, and little whiskers. I let it dry and then took all of my clay pieces outside to coat with an acrylic sealer. And here they are, all finished. You need to finish these things with something because the clay is made from PVA glue, which is normally water soluble, so these things would eventually dissolve if exposed to enough water. I still wouldn't recommend exposing them to water after finishing them with acrylic spray or whatever, but at least they'll have some kind of layer of protection if an accident did happen. hope you all enjoyed this week's project. If you did, please leave a like. If you want to see more, then feel free to subscribe. I post DIY videos every Thursday. You can follow me on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, or Pinterest, and I'll leave the information of those down below. If you have any questions or suggestions for future videos, please leave a comment down below, and I'll see you next week.